Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
from sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this bonus episode. Oh my gosh, we've done 2 bonus episodes already.
Have we released any of those bonus? Well, we obviously haven't released this one since we just started recording it, and we're 11 seconds in.
Yes, by the time this is released, hopefully the other bonus episode will also be released because there was a little snafu with that one, so we'll double check. Yep. So sorry if this is the first bonus episode and I said it's the second, but anyway, it's a bonus episode. Yep. And what I mean by that is we're really going into this deep conversation around arousal versus attractiveness versus recovery versus just living in the world and noticing that people are pretty and like what does all of this mean, right? And so I hope that episode was helpful, and I hope it answers some questions, and I hope it also gave you guys some encouragement in terms of what we want to be working towards as individuals moving towards health. I think that's a high standard, and I think it's one we should all strive towards. As a betrayed partner, I understand and have lived the reality that it's very difficult once somebody has abused sexuality and has misused sexuality, how hard it is to trust that they can have a healthy sexual mindset. And I think a couple of the things that we mentioned in the last episode play into rebuilding trust in that area. One is that are they able to verbalize like what their patterns and triggers were so that you feel good knowing, hey, they're very aware of how their brain works, how their patterning is, why they acted out this way. And then 2, are they able to communicate these things clearly to you? These ongoing conversations about where you are in your mental health, in your physical health, in your recovery, in your journey about learning about yourself and who you are as a human and who you're going to be. Are you having these conversations regularly? I always think around these particular topics, and honestly, anything in recovery, more communication, not less. Mm-hmm. I always say couples in recovery from this stuff cannot over communicate, but they can absolutely, and I see it all the time, under communicate.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that's from fear. Sometimes that's, I'm not sure I want to be that vulnerable. Vulnerability is scary. Maybe I'm still getting really triggered and activated. And what I call it trigger tennis. Sometimes my trigger triggers your insecurity, and then your insecurity triggers my wound. And then, so we're just going back and forth. And so we need to learn how to break those habits. And we break those by constantly having vulnerable communication with each other about how we're feeling and why and what's underneath that. And if that's new, we have communication episodes, and we would also encourage you to work with your practitioners for tools and resources to help you in that area. But yeah, so I think we want to hold the high standard. We want to get really clear on what we think health is, which is part of why we wanted to do this bonus episode. So I'm going to read 2 short excerpts from 2 separate books that help us define clearly what this looks like so that you can hold those high standards. And just to kind of reiterate, when Patrick, even though he has such a healthy mindset today, and I really believe that he can navigate the world in a healthy way. When he started navigating, the tools and the resources that you get influenced by or that you bring into your recovery process are really important, which is why we're very, very careful about the resources that we recommend, because we always want them to be resources that communicate that recovery is possible and you don't have to live in sobriety, living in a struggle for the rest of your life. Like, this is actually something you can break free from and live in the world as a normal, healthy human being when you do the work. And so you had read a book in the beginning, Every Man's Battle, that does the opposite. It really reiterates this concept in the church community and in the world that is, you're a man, you have a monkey brain. That's just how it works. Everybody struggles with it, and you're doomed to struggle with it forever. And the other idea that if you see someone that is attractive, it equals lust. There's no way you can avoid that. It will go there. You're just who you are. The best you can do is maybe not act out to it and not have an affair. But other than that, women just need to tolerate and understand that that's being a man, right? Mm-hmm. So you read that book as somebody who was desperately trying to recover, who was ashamed of your behavior, who wanted to do the right thing, who wanted to help me. And it did, as strong as you are as a human being, it did make you doubt yourself. It did instill more fear that we were talking about in that last episode. Fear-based is never healthy. It's never going to help you actually access freedom. And I actually, unfortunately, as the betrayed, wounded person, had to step in and go, you're capable of more than that. That's ridiculous. Delete all of that information.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thankfully, that's because I had been more and more exposed to these resources. And so I'm going to just share those with you today. So the first resource, we've mentioned this in previous episodes, is Sexual Integrity 101. This is a resource from Pure Desire, and it's an 8-week study for men, women, and churches. Really excellent, highly recommend. But I'm just going to read a really short little blurb from it. It's literally just this little, I don't know, maybe you'd call it a chart, that is unhealthy sexuality versus healthy sexuality. So again, just this idea of like, let's define it. Let's get really clear on what's normal and what's not normal. Or let me clarify it. What's healthy and not healthy, because things can be very common, but they don't have to be normal or healthy. And this is, if you guys happen to have Sexual Integrity 101, it's page 110 on the workbook. So unhealthy sexuality, I'm going to read this list, and then I will read the healthy sexuality as opposed to alternating. Unhealthy sexuality degrades and shames. It's demanding and obligatory. It victimizes and exploits. It lacks emotional attachment. Needs dominated by one, is built on dishonesty, is unsafe, creating fear, serves to medicate pain, meets self-focused needs, compromises values and beliefs, reflects a double life.
Sounds like sex addiction.
I was just thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, everything on that list describes the addictive pattern 100%. Yeah. It's selfish, it's dishonest, it's unsafe, it creates fear, it medicates pain, it's focused on you, it compromises your values, all of those things, and yet you still do it. So that is unhealthy sexuality. Okay, those are the things that we're trying to get away from. Now, when we are a betrayed partner going, am I demanding too much? Am I expecting too much? Like what am I allowed to expect when it comes to defining fidelity, right? Let's read healthy sexuality. The healthy sexuality says it is respectful, it's fun and exciting, it's victimless, it's intimate, mutuality and needs expressed, trust is foundational, it's safe, serves to connect emotionally, creates warmth and oneness, deepens your values and beliefs, and is authentic. And I would say comes from a place of authenticity. Yeah, because if you think about the other one, living a double life and secrecy, there's no level of alignment and authenticity there. So I like rephrasing that. Healthy sexuality is authentic, yes, but it comes from your authenticity. And the one above that deepens your values and beliefs. All of those are going to be aligned in healthy sexuality. And it's going to feel relaxing. It's going to feel happy. It's going to feel safe. This is where people feel seen and valued and prioritized and loved for who they are as a human being.
It's really interesting because the thing I'll say to people, and we certainly went through this too, is yes, I betrayed you, but I think both of us had to learn what healthy sexuality was like through this process, from our own wounding, from our own, family patterns, from all of those things. And so there were moments when it was really scary, like you, like we talked about connecting on a physical intimacy level, like I was afraid, like you were like, I want you to pursue me. And I'm like, but I want to be super healthy. And then, but in my mind at that moment, super healthy meant not doing anything because it was scary to step into that. And I didn't want to misfire. My thought was I had treated you poorly as it was. I had been the epitome of unhealthy sexuality that I wanted to win now with healthy sexuality. And it was hard. So I want to make sure people recognize that like, it's not just the addict that has the unhealthy sexual patterns. We've all been influenced by society and how it teaches us and how it does all of these different things to us. And so it is a journey that you can engage together and learn these things. And it's okay in a moment, let's say you're in a physical intimacy moment, you go, I'm not comfortable. Can we stop? You know what I mean? Can we pull back? Can we reset? And it's really okay. And,
Well, and one thing we didn't mention in the last episode that I think is really important, and hopefully maybe you gathered it just by you and I discussing it, is couples really need to make sure that the terms that you are using, the words that you are using are clearly defined and understood by each partner.
Yep.
Because when I said in the last episode, triggers, for example, one partner might go, oh, that means that he is sexually aroused. And he might mean my nervous system was activated because I'm trying to be hyper aware of my surroundings, which
trying
is
to do the right thing,
which is part of recovery, like becoming more aware and then doing the right thing.
Right.
And so making sure that you're both on the same team with that. And then same thing with like the definition of sobriety and the definition of relapse and the definition of masturbation. It's sometimes very surprising and sometimes very unfortunate to me that part of addiction, and what I hear sometimes with my clients and their partners, is that there will be a lot of qualifying, minimizing, or denial in terms of what something means and how it falls into a category. And so they'll be able to say, yes, I've done XYZ, or no, I haven't done XYZ. And to the betrayed partner, it's a complete lie, or it's an omission, or whatever, because they've gotten around in their mind some version of a definition. So I think it's important that we get very clear and detailed about what do we think these things mean. How can we encompass any behavior that we think would feel uncomfortable, unsafe, taking your sexual energy away from me, not being honest. I think that's one of the key terms here, is like anything that's not being fully honest. If you're hiding something from your partner, and she's assuming that you're in sobriety, and then you say, in your mind, you're like, well, I am based on your definition, but then you have something else. Like, let's make sure that we're being honest. Like, we cannot have a healthy relationship without honesty. But I think defining terms is really important because it comes up a lot. I have these sessions with my clients where I'm like, let's define sobriety. Let's define relapse. Let's define sobriety versus recovery. Let's define what a slip is. Like, let's make sure that we're very clear on what all these things mean to us. And then let's communicate the expectation to our partner so that, and there's only so much, like, obviously if your partner wants to lie to you, there's only so much we can do. But what we're trying to do is get really clear on what our expectations of health are, so that if something does happen, if they do lie to us, if they do kind of manipulate and evade, it's like, okay, come on. Like, you know what my expectation was. I made it as clear as I could without understanding the way your brain works because you didn't tell me and you weren't fully honest, right? So we're trying to be as clear as we possibly can so that the boundaries are set so that we're not confused later down the road if something is stepped over.
Yeah. I feel like this, in my mind, and this is I think it's a good standard. I believe it's a good standard. You just let me know. But if I remember thinking this, like, if I had, once I got into sobriety and then recovery, if there had been a camera in the house and every spot where I went and you were looking over my shoulder as I looked at my phone, you would be like, good to go. You know what I mean? And so, like, because that's not what I was, right? And so, like, I've kind of used that internal standard, like when I travel now. Like, if you wanted me to set up a Ring camera in the corner of the room, are you going to be like, good job, Pat, I saw you go to sleep at 8:00 and then you woke up at 4:30 and you went and worked out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to be happy with that? And so I think that's a good standard. And I think it goes back to what you're saying is about being open and honest and being under integrity, and being seen in 100% of your life, how, if your wife walks in on you standing in the shower, are you going to be ashamed? Are you going to hide? Or are you going to be like, hey, how's it going? You know what I mean? So it's just, using that kind of a standard.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think in relationships, there's a difference between secrecy and privacy. Like, maybe you have some privacy in terms of, hey, I'd like to get changed in the bathroom with the door closed. But there's no secrecy. You're just back there getting dressed.
That's
You're not pulling out your phone. You're not doing other things, right? So I think we have to understand, and people sometimes will get interesting in their feelings about this, but I really don't think there should ever be something as secrecy in a marriage, because otherwise what secrecy allows is the opportunity for a lie. Right. And we've talked about how relationships have to be built on a foundation of honesty. So we're getting a little off course here, but
bring it home. Kylene. Bring it home.
Okay. So we were just talking about healthy versus unhealthy, right? So lying is certainly part of that. Okay. So the second resource that I just wanted to wrap up this bonus episode with, when we're talking about, okay, how do I know if he's in recovery? If he's like finding a woman is pretty, what do I do about that? Is it bad? Is it me versus like, is it actually him being in recovery, or is this a potential, relapse situation? Like, what does this look like, right? I always refer people to the book, The Great Sex Rescue, by Sheila Gregoire. So this is a faith-based perspective, because what she's doing is she's countering the myths and the lies that we've been taught in faith culture, and she's trying to reestablish the definition of healthy and what's normal from a perspective of sexuality. And she's basing that on a lot of research about how do beliefs that we have, like purity culture or modesty boundaries and things like that, how do they negatively impact people and their ability to be free and happy and safe, secure, healthy people as adults who can navigate their sexuality in a healthy way. And instead, what a lot of these beliefs do is create a lot of dysfunction in sexual thinking, a lot of fear-based activities, a lot of bondage, a lot of addiction, a lot of abuse in relationships, just a lot of negative things. So her book is excellent. I am going to put a little bit of a trigger warning in here because there is an example that might seem very surprising in that she gives. And I will talk about that in a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of let you know that one of the examples she gives is a little bit, it might sound a little crazy, but this is, if any of you have the book, The Great Sex Rescue, it is on page 81 with the bolded part sets that where I'm starting. It says, noticing is not lusting. So again, we're kind of going into this definition of like answering the question from the last session of, hey, like my husband used to have a thing with yoga pants. Now he says he's like noticing, oh, hey, someone's in yoga pants, but then he doesn't do anything with it. Like, is this bad? Is this good? I'm uncomfortable with it, right? So this goes into continuing to think about that. Noticing is not lusting. Perhaps the reason this every man's battle phenomenon became so dominant is actually a definitional problem. Too often, it seems to us, books that talk about lust equate noticing a woman is beautiful with lusting after her. But is noticing actually lusting? When commenting on lust, we often pull up this Bible passage, quote, "You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Matthew 5:27-28. Let's dissect this passage for a moment. It does not say that everyone who sees a woman has committed adultery. It says that a man who looks at a woman with lust has committed adultery. Seeing is not wrong. You can't help but see if your eyes are open. Looking, on the other hand, is a deliberate action. But looking in and of itself is also not wrong. It's looking at her for your sexual gratification that crosses the line. It is not that he sees. It is not even that he looks. It is that he looks with a specific purpose to ogle her and fantasize about her. That means that sexual attraction is not lust. It is possible to notice that someone is very good looking and then do absolutely nothing else with that information. We believe that the temptation to lust can feel insurmountable because we conflate it with attraction. This makes men and boys hypervigilant, trying not to even see. It's like the pink elephant phenomenon. As soon as you tell someone, don't think of pink elephants, what's the first thing they do? They think of pink elephants. On average, men respond more to visual sexual stimuli than women do. Yes, although we'll soon look at how women are very visually sensitive as well. But too many people have misrepresented what the psychological research says. It is one thing to say, for most men, sexual arousal results primarily from visual stimulation, and quite another to say, for all men, lustful thoughts will happen unless he avoids any visual stimulation. Psychological research definitely says the former, yet whole doctrines and books have been written on lust and modesty, assuming the latter. Reading these books, we are given a picture of how seeing a woman leads to lust that looks like figure 5.1. And that figure says, there is a woman, you notice her body, you find her attractive, you feel tempted to lust after her, lust, like as if it's like this step progression that's you can't avoid. Seeing a woman, noticing her body, being attracted to her, lusting after her, they're presented as steps that inevitably follow after one another, like a moving sidewalk at an airport. It's difficult to get off that sidewalk once you're on it, and you really, really don't want to get to the end. The only way to exit the moving sidewalk is to avoid her completely by bouncing your eyes, neutralizing the threat. We propose that it looks more like figure 5.2. The route to lust is not straightforward, and there are many, many chances to avoid lust that don't need to lead to stress. Is it possible to notice a woman is beautiful and even to feel a flash of attraction and then to think nothing more of it and go on about your day? Frankly, this hypervigilance is stressing out a lot of men who are simply trying to be good guys. The first chapter of Through a Man's Eyes explains the battle that men face on a daily basis with sexual stimuli all around them, trying not to look at billboards on the drive to work, trying to bounce their eyes from the barista's chest, worrying that a female coworker in a tight blouse might sit directly across from them. In the book, we read that, quote, Jack breathes a sigh of relief when a coworker's skirt doesn't ride up too high, and the next few hours are tough because another attractive coworker is in his line of sight. Sheila's husband, works in an almost all-female setting. He's a pediatrician, his colleagues are female, the nurses tend to be female, and the parents bringing in the kids tend to be female. Did he experience this level of stress all day? After reading that chapter, I asked him. He laughed. I asked again. He made another joke. I got rather perturbed that he wasn't taking me seriously. Wait, he said, you're saying that there are guys who are stressed to go to work because they might lust? That's crazy. But could I believe my husband? The book told me all men struggle with this, but they don't know how to explain it or are afraid to confess their struggles to their wives. What if the way we're talking about lust makes these problems seem bigger than they otherwise would be? That's what Chris, a male commenter on my blog, found. Now, this is Kylene speaking. This is the story that may be slightly upsetting. I will talk about it afterwards really briefly. So this is from Chris, a comment on her blog. As someone who grew up in the every man's battle purity movement era, I've been working on resetting my brain for a few years now. So many years of struggling daily to just avoid looking. The Bible says his burden is easy and his yoke is light, but spending every part of every day spending energy to make sure I didn't look at an attractive woman is the opposite of easy and light. I was forced to confront my wrong thinking while on vacation in Europe. The first day on a topless beach in Spain was excruciating. I was giving myself a migraine, constantly bouncing my eyes, but having nowhere to bounce them to. I was definitely not enjoying the beautiful beach, nor enjoying time with my beautiful wife. Near the end of the first day, I realized this was no way to live. I remembered your writing about focusing on the whole person without making them into a sexual object. I talked to my wife and explained all this to her. With some fear and apprehension, I looked up at a beach full of breasts and started to talk through the process of not making them there for my sexual gratification. The rest of the trip was so relaxing and enjoyable, and I had such a good time with my wife on the beach. Since then, I can see an attractive woman and not become aroused. Chris experienced freedom from a lifelong struggle simply by rejecting the lie that he could not help but lust. But what if it's not only men who are hurt by this teaching? And then she continues to talk about how it impacts women. I believe, does hearing about men's struggles help women, right? So we've talked about that too.
Yeah,
it's like, then women get sucked into that, and then we're like, well, I guess they can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
So the reason, obviously, a lot of people in recovery are going to go, I do not want my husband at a topless beach. And that, obviously, we all have to know our own level of triggers and our own level of stress and our own level of healing in our relationship around this. It's not something that I would ever want to do, and it's probably not something that a lot of my clients would ever want to do.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great example because it is kind of extreme. He was able to go into a situation that he was like viewing women as sexual objects and going, man, this is really hard and I'm trying not to do this. And because of the foundation of the belief itself, that he was bound to do that because he was a man and there were sexual body parts in front of him, then he was really, really struggling and it was causing stress. When he thought about, let me view these people as human beings, it brought down the stress in his body. It took the arousal part away, the sexuality component of it completely away. And he was able to be in a situation that objectively we could say is generally sexualized. He was able to be in a situation and not sexualize them and actually be present and focused and engaged with his wife and things like that. So I wanted to give those as examples because I really think the beliefs that we hold around these things shape how we act, and they also dramatically impact the level of standards that we think we're allowed to have. And I think these types of beliefs, countering that and saying, hey, no, like freedom is possible, is only empowering for men. Because even in that story, like think about how disempowering it was for him to be like, I'm trying to do the right thing, but I literally physically can't. And then he goes, actually, I can.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting as you're telling that story, and I've read that before, but it reminded me of what I said on the last podcast about I grew up in Miami and then I got here to Ohio and I heard all this talk about girls in bikinis and spaghetti straps. I'm like, that's crazy because practically down there, of course, then you go to Europe and they have a slightly different mindset about a topless beach. Like to them, it's a thing, and like nobody, I think as a collective, I'm not saying everybody, but as a collective, they don't view it as a sexualized thing. To them, it's more of a practicality of sun exposure, being able to be out in the sun and that sort of thing. Now, to your point, as a couple, you make decisions based on your life story and say, well, maybe I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And in the same way that somebody says, I'm afraid of flying, so I'm going to take a ship to Europe, right? It's, you just make different decisions.
Yeah.
And so, but it does kind of highlight that in what is what could be considered healthy from a cultural perspective, can really take on an outsized a notion of a lack of freedom. You know what I mean? So yeah.
I always think it goes back to asking yourself, one, what are the beliefs that I actually hold around these things? So do I think that freedom is possible, for example? Do I think that I can actually live my whole life without acting out, without viewing pornography? Like, do I actually think that's something that humans are capable of doing? You got to ask yourself, like, are there any beliefs kind of in your way there? Right. And then anything that you're living into that is fear-based, we've got to question that. We've got to challenge it, because if it's fear-based, it's not going to work for you.
Healthy.
It's not healthy. It's not going to help you achieve your goals.
Right.
It just won't. So this was a complicated one, but I'm glad that we did it. I think it's something that will resonate with every betrayed partner. It's multifaceted in terms of answering the question about, how do we navigate the world when we have misused and misunderstood sexuality, and it's been an unhealthy experience in our lives, and now it's hurt our partners. What do we do, and how do we move forward? So hopefully we answered some of that and got you thinking a little bit and encouraged you that real freedom is possible. And I will just take a moment here to reiterate, we encourage that you work with providers, with practitioners, with coaches that can help you think through these things, that can help you identify the beliefs and the fears, the insecurities, the triggers, and the wounds that are going to keep you stuck from actually getting into full freedom. So if you don't feel like you can get there on your own right now, we always encourage you working with someone. And that goes for whether you are the recovering addict or if you're the betrayed partner. Both individuals need to kind of work through, like, what is healthy, what is unhealthy, what do I believe, what's keeping me stuck, how can I move forward? And so individual support can help us identify those things that are universal in one way, but the specifics of them are going to be very unique to you. So if there are any betrayed partners listening, if this was helpful, please join the Recover You Facebook group. That link is always in the show notes, so check that out, click it, join the group. Again, I try to answer questions directly in there, but sometimes maybe we'll answer them on the podcast, or if you maybe even post in there, if you're listening and you remember, like, post and say, hey, can you and Patrick talk about this on the podcast? Because sometimes I think it's extra helpful to have Patrick's perspective as well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for being here. And then if you are a betrayed partner and you do not have a coach and you want some one-on-one support, please click the link in the show notes as well. That is for a free connection call. You and I can get connected. I can see if I can help you, and we can kind of go from there. Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we will see you next week. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.